Hello there and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Santos Dumont in Brazil, SBRJ, the RNP whiskey for runway 02 right. AR is required for this one in your FMCs. We'll take a little look at what that means in a minute. Little image of it there. Let's go bring ourselves into the game. Here we go, welcome. Find yourselves today mixing things up a little bit in the cockpit of the 737-8. There she is. New explain update today. I'm not entirely sure exactly what's in it. I didn't read the changelog, but one thing is for sure: there's a big difference between the brightness outside and inside the aircraft. I may need to modify the time of day somewhat to help us see a little better. We'll just see how it goes. Perhaps actually that's a little better. Middle of the day. There we go. Alright, so we're currently on the airway here, on the way to Colby, which was the final waypoint for our arrival. For our route, should I say, that will begin the arrival. We'll hold there. Yeah, so got weather my side, terrain your side, just because that's how it rolls in the 7-3. Alright, let's have a little look at our destination then, SBRJ. I realised I didn't show this particular page for the first one we did at Innsbruck. Kind of important. Two very important things to notice here. Number one, that these runways are incredibly close, or should I say really three things. These runways are incredibly close together is number one. Number two, the left runway with regards to the north facing side, or the right runway if we're coming in towards the south, is too thin and is not authorized for category C aircraft such as the Boeing 737 or the A320, stuff like that. So the only runway we can use is the fatter one of the two. Second thing to notice, very, very short runway. We're talking 4,341 feet, which is less than a mile. Just if we look there, 1,323 meters. In other words, get ready to step on the brakes when you land. You're going to need them. So those are the three things. They're very close together. We're only to use the fatter of the two, and it's a very short runway. Another thing, photograph here, and again this is from Navigraph, and they do supply a few pictures here, not always in the greatest of resolution, but that's fine, it'll suffice for the needs. I'm going to point out here, this is on the overview page, this here is the runway where my mouse is. It doesn't matter that it's not very clear. What's important to note is lots of mountains, and it's a city. There are actually lots of airports in the vicinity, so mix those two things together. Lots of mountains, lots of airports. Suddenly, and obstacles as well, aside from the mountains, and suddenly it becomes clear why we need to be ducking and diving and weaving round a very precise RNP style approach. We'll be coming in from over from over the mountain side, weaving obviously not directly over, but around the side. We'll then be skirting across the city. Over on this mountain here, one of these two, I think it's this one where my mouse is that big Christ the Redeemer statue that Rio de Janeiro is famous for, as well as the massive long beaches. It's a beautiful place. I'd love to go at some point. It's about 7 million people that live here, and the temperature and everything, the beaches, it's just you can see why some of the people who lived there said, this place is so beautiful that when they built it, God forgot about the rest of the world. And anyways, leaving that aside, over here, it's just off to the side, we can't see it, is a big weird shaped hill that's known as Sugar Hill. we need to thread our ways through there. And again, it's all RNP, so the autopilot is going to fly this entire approach, and we'll have a closer look at that in a minute. This is the same airport viewed from the other end, and indeed, if I zoom in, I realize again it's not the clearest, but this here where my mouse is the runway we're landing on. You can see how close the thinner of the two runways is, and obviously we'll be avoiding that. So this here is this famous so-called Sugar Hill that we'll be avoiding. If we look real close, I don't know if you can see it, there's like a faint line diagonally running through. That is a cable car, and so we can't just fly through here as what may appear at first glance. There's also a bridge ways over in the background. We're not talking about that, and we're talking about this diagonal line that's running there from the top of the hill over to here. Yeah. And so on our approach, again, we'll be coming through the city, we'll be threading through this gap here, and then rolling out onto final. And again, the way that the RNP does this is incredible. One other thing to note, this is not actually the approach we'll be doing, but it's a very similar one. And the reason I'm showing this is that this is a prescribed visual track, and it's as near as damn it to what the RNP is going to be doing. So the waypoint is again, it's slightly different, so don't get hung up on the waypoint. But suffice to say, you know, over here we see some of these taller buildings in the city. This is the city area. Over here is the mountain. Here we see the Sugar Hill, and we're going to be swinging around in this direction, coming in over the water here, and then dropping out onto final. Somewheres over here is this Christ Redeemer statue. It may even be this number 2, although I seem to think it's a little further back. I'm not sure it's modelled in X-Plane. It certainly is in Flight Sim 2020, but you know, the realism sucks in that game. So while it looks better in that game, the realism doesn't, and I just don't want to show you it on an unrealistic simulator, even though we're going to lose out on some of the graphics. It's unfortunate. It would be great if we had the best of both worlds in one sim, but we don't. Taking a look then at the arrivals, so here we are at Colby, and yeah, getting there right now. Colby, legs, what we doing? There's a Col 01. Let's just up select Colby, there we go. And there's a hold. Alright, so taking a look here, if we see it's slightly offset on the approach chart. Now you can do any approach that you like, you know, arrival. Let's get real specific here. The arrivals and the approaches, you know, they're two separate things. We're doing first of all the arrival or the star. Depends which direction clearly that you're coming from. What's crucial is that it spits us out at this point here, Gelot or Gelot. And notice there we need to be 6,000 feet. So whichever star you're doing, and you know, there's quite a lot for this airport, and there's a lot of approaches as well, so can't go into them all. Just make sure for this approach it finishes you off at Gelot, so that you can you know, go via there. So here we are at Colby, and again this slight offset tab here, there is a hold over Colby. It's a right-hander, it's a 086 inbound right-hander, so we're currently in that hold now. Slightly overshot. That was, you know, my fault for just messing around with the FMC, but if we zoom in, you can see there that the FMC is trying to capture it. Crazy way to capture it. Never mind, we'll forget about that for a minute just while we take a look at this. So let's have a look at the actual approach, and again, as we've discussed, it's the here we are, Santos, Dumont, SBRJ, and it's the RNP Whiskey for runway 02 right, and again, AR required. What is the AR? This is where RNAVs and RNP approaches differ, and it allows for real precise on, you know, on the RNPs. Specifically, the AR is allowing you to fly this radius, this smooth curve that is centered on a fix. What fix doesn't matter. The point is it allows you to fly a curve. The old style RNPs, it was just more like this, a straight line, point to point to point, like here. Notice here, there's no curve here. Clearly the plane has to fly in a curve. It can't just suddenly turn 20 or 30 degrees in 1 second. It has to fly a curve. And so if you prescribe a curve like this, not only is the plane flying from waypoint to waypoint to waypoint, but because the curve is literally in and of itself a prescribed path, the plane knows, yes, I'm going towards this curve, but the way I'm turning is correct. I'm not deviating to the left or to the right hand side of this curve. Clearly, if it was just this point to this point, the plane would have to fly a curve anyway, but it wouldn't have any idea as to how tight and how much wiggle room does it have. And so that is the that's this AR bit. Some other things to note. Obviously, like most of these, special aircraft and aircrew authorization required. All right, that does. I'm just gonna say it. I never was one of these that was gonna put these disclaimers. And by the way, this is for flight simulator use only, not for any sort of real world. I just thought, what is the point in even saying that? Do you know what I mean? It's, if somebody wants to use what some random guy on the internet says as a real world procedure in the real life, let them go ahead. But what I will say is, I almost feel like, for some reason, that, don't follow what some random dude, i.e. me, says on the internet about how to do this in real life, all right? That said, if you're doing it in the sim, which we are, let's just go do it. It shouldn't need that. There's some people that put that disclaimer on the front of every flight sim video they do, and it's like, gee, come on. Anyway, so here we go. Special aircraft aircrew required. 2, the RF required, which we've discussed. That's the again the ability to allow the turn to be to be ironed out in this curve kind of a way, and that curve be acceptable. The autopilot knows how sharp that curve needs to be, and the reason it knows that is there'll be an invisible point somewhere in the middle, and the autopilot's basically told that point, build a curve around it at a certain distance. And so let's say it's a radius of, I don't know, let's say a mile. Well, then the autopilot knows, well, if I've got this point here and I've got to build a curve with a radius of a mile, it's going to look like this. And of course, you've got your waypoints there that define the start and the end of this curve. So that's all that means. And not every aircraft has it. This approach, if you're wanting to do it in the tow list, all I'll say is the tow list won't let you do it by default because it's going to say the runway's too short, but there is a way around it. I will show that in another video if I haven't already, but there's a way that you can basically force the tow list, which includes like your A321, to use this airport, even though it Airbus says no, it's too short for this aircraft. You can force it, and then it'll fly the approach in the same manner as what you'll see the Boeing do here. Number 3, LNAV, VNAV. Clearly we've got some temperature mins and maxes of it to do with density, altitude, and so on. Clearly, if the temperatures are way off, your altimeter might, it's going to read slightly off, and based on that, it's basically saying if it's less than 10 degrees or above 45, you can't do this approach. Now, less than 10, you may think, well, that surely happens all the time. Well, we're in South America and Brazil here. I don't think they know what 10 degrees is. They probably think that's when it starts to snow. Do not perform the RNP transition of missed approach before 087 from runway 02 right. So what this means, if we take a clear look here, if you have to go missed for whatever reason, there's another plane, you're unstable, ATC tells you to spin off, whatever it is, and you're at RJ084 or before, you cannot begin and fly the missed procedure. What you would have to do is continue the approach and only go missed once you're past this RJ804. Actually, it doesn't say RJ084 on here, it says 087 from the runway. How do I know they're the same? Well, if we take a look here, RJ084, there's the runway we see, there's 0.9 miles. So 0.87 is going to be just after RJ084. And, you know, and that's, you can see that defined there by that arrow just ever so slightly after. So if you need to go missed, you can't actually go missed before. And that's probably due to the Sugar Hill and all the rest of it. And so, and if you go missed, well, you know, you follow the dotted brick road there all the way out. And last but not least, vertical path and PAP is not coincident. Well, what does that mean? That means when the autopilot's doing its thing and it's got you right on the numbers, the PAPs may show you deviating either high or low. You know, the 2 reds, 2 whites. You know, there may be 3 reds, there may be 3 whites. What this is saying is, don't worry about it. That's normal. Runway elevation we see here is 0, so it's going to be very low. Transition out 7,000. Airport LE 10. So let's set our landing elevation then nearest to 10, which is going to be 0 when it's to the nearest 50. And anything else there? That's the landing shots. All right, let's bring ourselves over to the arrivals page. I'm going to keep this on, and it looks like we're almost at Colby. And we need to build this up. So again, always slightly different, but I'd just like to show, you know, the different ways of doing it. So here we go. Airbus SBRJ is where we're coming in. And here we go. You know, I was saying that Boeing's let you put the stars in before the approaches. I mean, you can do it either way. But in this case, it's the Ropus 1 Alpha. So next page, Ropus 1 Alpha. The transition. Well, we've got 2 choices, Colby or Aknub. Well, we're at Colby, so that's where it is. And then it's the RNP. Should have its whiskey. Let's just double check. It's the RNP Whiskey 02, right? And again, that's down as RNAV, so we'll stick that in. Transition Gelot, of course, we spoke about that being here. It's the only one anyway, but regardless, make sure that's selected. Okay, that. And now the hold is about to begin, but I'm just going to exit the hold manually now. If we come back over to the approach page, I'm just going to tell my autopilot to go direct to ROPAS. So I'm just going to up-select ROPAS. Get me out of the hold that way rather than wait for another full 360. Things to note at ROPAS, look at this. Flight level 280, but with the blue lines above it means we need to be 28,000 feet or below, not above. Usually seen the blue line beneath. Obviously, sometimes you've got double blue lines, such as here, where they mean you need to be exactly at that height, not above or below. Clearly here, this one is below, so we need to be at or above 12,000 at that one, but here at or below 22,000. We've got that there for ROPAS. Again, with it being LNAV, VNAV, kind of star, all the modern FMCs on McDo's just let you slide. You know, we could dial this down all the way to the floor, and the restrictions in the page here is going to prevent us from, you know, ever breaking the restrictions on here. I mean, in real life, you're supposed to check all of these, match with every single waypoint that's been loaded in. For brevity's sake, we're not going to do that. We are, though, going to set ourselves down. I'll tell you what, we'll initially set ourselves to 6,000, and we'll assume ATC says something like clear to descend to 6,000 per the star, or something like that. So we'll grab ourselves 6,000. We see their top of descent in about 8 miles. I'm just going to come over to the descent page and hit descend now, and we'll exec that one in. I don't actually have a forecast in because I didn't sim brief this one out, so I've not really got a forecast descent for this one, but we'll just see how it goes. For those curious, what's the descend now button do? It basically drops you down before where the FMC reckons your top of descent point is, and it's going to drop you down at 1,000 feet a minute. once your 1,000 foot a minute descent intersects with what the FMC calculated should be where you descend, basically you'll change from 1,000 feet over to what the FMC wants. And here you can see those 2 points are potentially closing together. By the way, we were talking about RNPs. Let's have another look at the chart. Does it say? It will say somewhere. The question is where. So, for example, here's one such example. RNP needs to be below 1.0 from runway until RJ 902. Well, there's the runway. I guess that's regards to mist. Yeah, there's 901. Yeah, there's 902. So it's basically, you need to know for sure where you are within 1 nautical mile to go mist, but it's much higher actually on the way down. By the way, losing RNP is one of the reasons that you would have to abandon this approach, which stands for the required navigation performance. So we'll go into that in a little bit. All right, here we see it. It's down at the bottom with the minimums. So the RNP, or the required navigation performance for this approach, is 0.1. That is as low as it goes at the moment for RNP. In other words, the highest amount of accuracy. The plane needs to know where it is and be satisfied it knows where it is, and the plane's going to have all sorts of gizmos in the background that are figuring out where it is, and not just where it is, but how precisely does it know where it is. They're sort of two separate things, and those two things are known as the ANP, or the actual navigation performance. Now, this number will change throughout the flight. It's not always the same. There you can see it's now just dropped from 0.05 to 0.04. Over here, we've got the required navigational performance. Now, currently is 0.5. So what that means is, to do what we're doing right now, by law, let's just call it, the legal procedure dictates that our plane not only needs to know vaguely where it is, but it needs to know where it is within an accuracy of 0.5 nautical miles. In other words, the plane needs to be satisfied. I think I'm here. I may be 5 yards to the right. I may even be 10 yards to the left. But what I can't be is, I think I'm here, but it could be a mile either side. And the reason it can't is because currently the required navigation performance is 0.5. And you see the actual performance is there is now 0.0203, flickering between the two. And so if you go in terms of nautical miles, the aircraft knows where it is within about 50 yards, give or take. It's something, if you want to multiply that out, it's something like that. And so if we come back to our approach here, that ANP needs to remain below 0.1 for the final stages of the approach, and that's obvious, right? We're threading in between mountains, right down low. There's statues, there's hills, there's cable cars, there's tall city skyscrapers. We can't be, I think we're here, but we could be a mile either way, because, if we're here and a mile either way, that probably puts us into the side of a hill. And so that's that one. We've also got some notes here. Mandatory, that's the 6,000 at Gellert, and we know that anyway because the star tells us it's mandatory. From then on, we've got a max 140 at Notice 2. That's in the turn, so we've got to be 140 knots or less in the turn. And then 3 max 175, that's when we go mist. So again, and that's duplicated there as well as here we see max 140. All right, so yeah, let's have a look then. That's we're getting through it. Let's have a look at the minimums. We see that's here, and that's at 305 on the barometric, or 296 on the old radalt. I think we'll go 305 again, just so our radalt doesn't start calling us minimums when we're passing over the top of a building or whatever, although it shouldn't really bring you within within 300 feet of a building, but we never know. So I'm just going to go 305 on that side. And so unlike the Airbus where you set that up down there, on the Boeings you set it up here. Minimums over to the barometric, and I'm just going to dial that until we get 305. So that's set. By the way, I checked the weather. I've got real world weather on. It's currently night time as I'm recording this, but I want to be able to move the sun around anyway for, just so, well, not just so we're not doing it at night, but so we can see things a little clearer. Yeah, so winds 170 at 1. Even though I'm missing the time, the weather is correct. So winds are basically light. Cav okay, temperatures 24, dew point 21, QNH 1011. So the one that's matters there is 1011. And again, something I really like about the Boeing, you can set your altimeter up ahead of time before changing over. So I'm just going to change my QNH there to 1011, and so that's set up ready for the change. The transition level was, we were told, I think it was 7,000 if I recall. Yeah, trans out there 7,000. I'll just double check. That's in here. Forecast. Well, for some reason we've got flight level 080. Let's have a look on the star page. Set by ATC, they're saying. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll leave it at 080. That's close enough. Alright, so that is all sorted. Progress. Let's come over to the init page. Let's do some Boeing isms then, just because, it's a very short runway and we're starting to arrive. Boeing, I really like the fix page. I think the Boeing does a better job with the fixes than the Airbuses. I don't know, there's some things I prefer about either aircraft for sure. So we know on that final turn we need to be 140 or less. Now it is a really short runway, so no doubt about it, it's a flaps full. So I'm going to go with flaps 40. Now I could get all creative on the gross weight, see if we can shave another knot off that. The way to find out is to come over to progress, and it reckons we're going to use about 600 or so pounds of fuel. So if I just round that off to 125, and indeed we do lose a knot on the approach, if by burning the fuel that we've got now versus what we're guesstimated to have left when we get there. So that was worth doing just for that one knot. Another thing that you may wish to do, especially on the Boeing or the aircraft that support it, like the A350, they're on there anyway, is just have this vertical profile descent page below your ND. That's going to let you know exactly where. Of course, that's going to give you this vertical situation display, which matters more and more. That is obviously impacted by the zoom, so when we zoom out, but when you start getting close, zooming in, this begins to matter a bit more. No doubt about it, we know it's a 4,000 and some foot runway. There's no guessing, it's auto brake max all the way. So we'll set that up here and now. We'll put the signs on. We should have had those on about 4,000 feet ago, as well as the turn-offs, because we're on the descent. We'll get the logo on and ready, as well as the wing lights, and everything else there looks good. I may even put the smoke into auto, and then if we do forget, they will come on. I can't remember if it's based on a flap or a gear setting, but either way, the signs come on. I think the smoking on auto, maybe 10,000 feet. I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think in real world you ever take them to off anyway during use. It's either on or auto, and then if they do forget, it's all good. Alright, coming in, autopilot bringing us in a little slow. I think I had quite a low cost index. Of course, you can't change that once you're in the descent already, but we can speed intervene. Let's just put a few knots on. So with the approach there set up, legs page, we've also got progress page 2, which is, you know, what some people like to put on for landing because it's going to give you your cross info right up there, as well as the headwind. We've got vertical deviation with regards to our descent down, but for now let's just keep it on the legs. So most of these restrictions are just height restrictions. Of course, we've got to be below 250 at 10 anyway, so let's let go of that. Now again, here we see the RNP and the ANP signified here, so very clearly listed. This pink thing, nothing to do with it. This is just our vertical deviation. So we see we're right on the money at the minute. And I'm just curious, actually, on the data page, do they show? Yeah, they do. Okay, yeah, so this is as well on the if you put the data page on, I mean, it's just too cluttered to be useful at this point. But you can actually see the RNP is even listed on each waypoint as we go on in. And if we just look in the corner, you see it's 0505. You see over there, I don't know if you can just make it out, is a 0.1. I realize the zoom's horrific. That, of course, 0.1 is coincident with our approach here. So the approach page does, as well as knowing the waypoints, it knows how much it's allowed. And in theory, I've never heard it, but in theory, if actual navigation performance drops below, as in gets less accurate than 0.1 mile, in theory we should get some sort of alert. I'll tell you what alert I have seen before, and again, it's only been on X-Plane, and it was on the tow list actually. It was to say that the GPS was lost, and there was a whole spiel that came with it about setting the FMC or the IRS to a certain setting. You know, being Airbus, everything's blue to do, right? So it tells you what to do. Anyway, here we're at 250, which is nice. We're below 10. I should really put the lights on if I'm trying to do it properly as well. Just because we're going to get busy, I'm going to put the continuous relights on as well as the smoking signs early. Retractables are going to be my clear to land. Altimeter standard, we're below 8,000, so we're going to switch that to local, which is 1011, so that's in. The minimums are in. I may just, for visual purposes, put the flight path vector on, so we can see, what the Boeing's is kind of called the bird, I guess. Although it doesn't, unlike the Airbus, unlike the Airbus, though, it doesn't change heading over to track, but rather it just lets us see, so it's real obvious is the wind blowing us one way or the other. You can see it's almost nothing, right? If anything, a hair to the left, but nothing worth mentioning. So we're starting to see the terrain.
1,000 to go.
Let's switch back to the star, give us a little idea of where we are, and just about meeting their Jello, where it's 6,000 mandatory. And as you can see, we're there. Actually, we're slightly high, you see, by about 200 and some feet. That will have been in no small part down to my request earlier on for a higher speed. So here we see, if I was to, I need to keep winding this down to keep the descent going, because you can see here where we need to be. So let's drop it all the way down. I'm just going to put the boards briefly. There we go. I didn't really need them at all, but I'm going to wind my altimeter down all the way to the minimums, so I'm just going to put 300. Oh no, it's missed approach, isn't it? What am I talking about? Minimums.
500.
Where are we on the missed approach? 2,000 feet. So let's put it on to 2,000 for now. see here, this is real messy, so I'm going to turn my data display off just to clean the ND up a bit. So we're on the straighten bit now. We've just passed Gillett. We're on the way to RJ 931 where we need to be 4,800. We see here the vertical display. We're bang on. So the VNav doing a real nice job. If anything, I would like it to start slowing down now. So what I'm going to do is speed into vent and actually wind it down. Autopilot adding power there. We can put flaps out at 250. I'm going to go flaps 2 just because, you know, it's like a mini, it's like a slats plus tiny bit of an air brake, right? It's a secret Boeing setting that Airbus don't have. Now you see, now it's asking for drag. 2 minutes ago it was powering up. So here we see our ways coming down. So we've got a 3.5 here. And then the final arc here begins at RJ032, which is this one here, 2.7. I'm going to go flap 5 and I'm going to get rid of the speed intervent and let the FMC decide what it wants. And if we take a look here, we're going to start and see some of the landmarks we were talking about. So if I zoom in, that weird one there, that's Sugar Hill, you know, that very odd shaped hill. Oh, we do have a Christ the Redeemer in X-Plane, so I apologies there to Austin. There we see him. And he is looking down into the bay where we'll be turning. There's some of the city buildings, and just behind those is the airport that we'll be landing. In fact, if I zoom really far in, we can just about make out the end of the runway here. Here, it's right up against the water, and there. Also, another major airport here. This is the main reason why we've got these crazy approaches for this little one. There's a much larger airport here with multiple large runways. Yeah.
1,000 to go.
Alright, so we're on and on. So at some point here, you want to be switching over to your approach mode. So I'm going to... can we not arm it yet? Apparently not. You watch me embarrass myself, and turns out that the Boeing can't do this approach after all. Let's dump the gear, flaps 15, and we take a look here. RJ032, we need to be 2007 or above, which we are. And we're coming up to this 160 or less speed restriction at 801. We've complied with that. Now it's fine, you know, on a clear day like this, but you know, you imagine doing this, it's foggy, you know, there's loads of hills.
500.
And clearly, you know, the pilot not flying, the pilot monitoring, as we see, is going to have the terrain radar on, and you know, you can see there, terrain 7-1, so it's letting them know, you know, you're surrounded by mountains basically. Well, there's 2000. Is our approach button working yet? No. I best carry on winding it down then. I'm not quite sure at this point. How far are we away from this? Are we already on the... So follow this bit. There's something... I want the approach normally on the Airbuses here. You can override and get the approach. We'll carry on the LNAV, VNAV then. I'm going to zoom right in. And I'm going to use my VS wheel
1,000 to go.
to force it down. I'm going to wind the altitude up to 2,000. Come on, VS, VS, VS. Wind it out the way then, VS. I hate that. And I'm going to have to go a bit steeper. Speed, remember, was 140 or less for this final turn, so I'm going to reduce now. Everything's coming real fast. I'm going to use my VS wheel to catch up with the altitude. We see we're about 200 feet too high. I'm going to slow down to ref, but I put a couple of knots on it. The winds are light, maybe a slight tailwind, but you know, I wanted this runway.
1,000.
Right, we've caught it up. Don't descend below. Oh my goodness, is it taking close?
Terrain.
We're right on the numbers though, so don't worry about it.
Terrain.
1,000 feet, stabilized, Mr. Perch, altitude set.
Now, how crazy is this for an approach, right? And the halo. Threading through the mountains, through the city. There's Christ the Redeemer statue. And there's this little bay area we were talking about, all these nice beaches. There's the Sugar Hill. The cable car isn't modelled in this, but again, there's a cable car there. Again, maybe a hair low, so we'll reduce descent rate. By the way, the final descent on this was not 3 degrees. I don't know if you noticed that. It was about 2.8 something, if I recall. Let's have a little look.
500.
Yeah, there we see it, 2.85. Runway now coming into sight. And again, just a hair low. I'm just going to reduce the VS a tad. And as soon as clearly you see it, you hear minimums, it's time to disconnect. You know, but whether you're Airbus or Boeing or anybody else, you know, you're not flying non-precision approaches below minimums. I'm going to disconnect the auto throttle. Flaps full. And again, we were told about the PAPIs not being coincident, and we see it right there. If we take a look, I'm just going to pause it. We're right on the right height there. You can see that little pink triangle, in this case the Boeing. We're right on. But if we look out the window, we see 1 white, 3 red. And so that notification about the PAPIs not being there, vertical path and PAPI not coincident, is exactly modelled in X-Plane, which is really nice to see. I don't know if it's like that in Flight Sim. I was kind of surprised to see that even modelled, which is why I paused it. Unpausing. Bit of power, getting a little bit slow. And again, it's this very short runway.
100.
Not enough, not a lot, not, yeah, plenty of time, but not very much time to stabilise.
5.
Down we go, reverses out.
$80 knots.
Idle reverse. Manual braking, we've got it. I'm going to leave the reversers on idle to help cool the brakes down. I'm not sure to what extent is that modelled on this particular aircraft. We see the brake temps there, 1,500. I'm guessing that's what 1.5 means. It certainly don't mean 1.5 degrees. So yeah, very hot indeed. I'm guessing Fahrenheit. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rio de Janeiro. And I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Yeah, so once again, Santos, Dumont, SBRJ on the RNP Whiskey 02 right. They are required via Gelut there. So again, any star that you like. If you're coming from the southwest, that star is likely to be the Ropus 1 Alpha. So just make sure that you're going through Gelut, whichever one it brings, and you can have that nice, exciting approach there at the end. Hope you enjoyed it, should I say. Hope to see you again soon. And until next time, wherever in the world you may be, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. From me in sunny Brazil, take care, bye-bye.